Doesn't take it. If you can hear me, councillors, Councillor Mildren, we can't see your picture. We need to see your video link. Perfect. Thank you. We're all streaming and we're good to go. Just ticking over 6 o'clock. Thank you, councillors, also council officers, members of the public as well. Welcome to our July council meeting. And this is obviously streamed as all our meetings are, but streamed today for those that can watch online. Just before we progress too much further, I just wanted to double check that all councillors are present and correct and can hear me okay. So I'll do a little bit of a roll call just in the order of which you appear on my screen. If you can essentially make sure your cameras are turned on at all points in time so I can see you all, councillors. I will be looking for a physical raised hand within your camera view. And just if you could take yourself off mute as you speak to me, Councillor Simpfendorfer.
Got you loud, 10 out of 10, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Quilty.
Hello. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Good evening, Mayor Poulton, and I'm coming loud and clear from your end.
Thank you. And Councillor Mildren.
Evening all.
Thanks very much. And councillors, I will just get you, now that I know that your audio does work, I'll just get you to keep yourselves on mute as much as possible, because sometimes we will pick up, obviously, on a little of that background noise. But before we continue, I must acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and also to those from other communities who are here with us today, for they hold the memories, the tradition and the culture of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Item 3 is apologies and leave of absence. Again, I note that Councillor Bennett is on leave until Friday the 9th of August. Councillors, do we have any other requests for leave? No, I'm getting all head shakes. That's fine. Thank you very much. Item 4, the declarations under Acts, regulations, codes or local laws. CEO, are there any declarations? No. Thank you. Declaration at item 5 by councillors of any conflicts of interest. Councillors, are there any conflicts of interest to disclose? I've got Councillor Simpfendorfer, Councillor Mildren, and also Councillor Quilty. Thank you very much. Councillors, did you want to explain? I'll start with you, Simpfendorfer, in my top corner. Your item of which you'll declare a conflict.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. 8.11, Victory Lutheran College, general conflict.
Thank you. Councillor Quilty, yours?
I have the same conflict of interest, point 11, the 8.11.
Thank you. And Councillor Mildren?
8.12.
Thank you very much. All right, councillors. We have our confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting at item 6. I'm looking for a mover. There's 2 separate parts here for 2 meetings that we've held. I'm looking for a mover that the minutes of the 28th and 29th of June be confirmed. Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer, as per the recommendation. Do I have a seconder, please, just by show of hands? So
just on that, Mr. Mayor, I noticed a typo perhaps on one of the dates. It should be Tuesday, June 29th instead of Monday, June 29th, but otherwise as per the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Simpendorfer. We'll get that adjusted. And I had Councillor Watson and Councillor Quilty both throw their hand up. So it's a quick draw. Which one of you want to be the seconder? Thank you, Councillor Quilty. I'll take you on that one. Does anyone wish to speak against? No, therefore carried unanimously. The second set of minutes that I need a mover and seconder on is for our meeting on Monday, the 5th of July. Councillors, is there somebody who's happy to move? Thank you, Councillor Simpendorf, for a seconder. As per the recommendation, thank you, Councillor Watson. Anyone wish to speak against? No, carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 7.1 is our delegates report, councillors. This is from the National Assembly of the Australian Local Government Association, which was a wonderful event that they've put on. The report has been put together by myself, also Councillors Hall and Mildren. I'll look to Councillor Hall and Mildren to move and second. So thank you, Councillor Mildren, to move. To second, Councillor Hall. Would either of you like to add verbal confirmation to what's written in that report? No. Does anyone wish to speak against? Oh, sorry, Councillor Hall. Yes, please.
I'm not going to say too much because of my throat, but yeah, this report gives a really good summary of the convention and the event that we went to. Key speakers and subject were, immense, and debated items which other councils nationwide brought up was quite interesting. I hadn't been involved in that sort of thing before. I thought it was a great experience, and for councillors that are on council at the moment and, in the future, it's a good event to go to, and, they should try to do it if they can once in their life on council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. I've ended up, because you were happy to speak, putting you down as the mover just to confirm. Councillor Mildred, did you want to add anything in the seconder? No, you're okay. Councillor Hall, I'm assuming nothing more in closing. And there was no one wishing to speak against, so therefore I'll carry that one unanimously. On to item 8.1, councillors, the Code of Conduct. Does anybody, it's their recommendations on page 11. Does anybody wish to move as per the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Watson, a seconder, and Councillor Simpendorfer. Councillor Watson, fire away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope that we never are required to pull this out of the book cabinet, but I think the most important thing is that we look to be respectful, especially when we have to have to resolve things of disputes, and I'm very happy to adopt it. And once again, it's a working document, so it can always be updated at any time we as councillors wish to update it, because it's our document.
Thanks, Councillor Watson. Councillor Simpendorfer.
I'll reserve the right, Mr. Mayor. Nothing at this stage.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know the Act says we have to have a code of conduct, and the Act specifies quite a few things that have to be in the code of conduct. But I think it needs to be said that people might think that the organisational arm of council is to implement the collective will of the elected arm of council. However, the new Act says councillors must not direct staff. Section 124 of the Act includes collective decisions of councillors as the council in not directing staff. So in effect, councillors, even by resolution at a council meeting, can't direct staff. The role of councillor has changed from advocating in debate to other councillors as part of the decision-making process to largely advocating to the mayor, who may or may not take up that advocacy with the CEO to have the community or councillors' views considered in the officer's decision-making. The mayor must be very careful in that process not to be seen to be directing the CEO. There's a whole lot of, this is quite technical stuff, but it's a fact of how this is structured under the legislation. Although it said councillors determine strategic and governance policy, in fact, it's the officers that prepare the documents and report to council. Councillors must be very careful not to direct what officers include in the policies. Legally, there is no scope at Wodonga Council for councillors to formally and properly contribute to the generation of policy and strategy, except by carefully framed comments and voting at a formal council meeting. We do not have committees with a legal ability to work up policy or strategy in any form. Council can only make a call on what is presented by officers. Now, I know that we'll get some differing points of view from officers onto how this should work, but technically this is correct under the Act. Councillors cannot influence what appears on council meeting agendas beyond lodging notices of motion, which are entirely at the discretion of the CEO. Due to many converging things, not least of which is the degree of delegation of authority, most actions and decision-making at Wodonga Council falls within the realm of being operational. The Act says councillors are not to have involvement in operational matters of council. The Act specifically prohibits councillors or council collectively from having involvement in responsibilities or functions of the CEO. Under the new Act, a decision by a delegated officer is a resolution of council with the same position as a resolution by vote of elected councillors. I could go on and on with the various things that are in place, and I could offer up some suggested solutions on how we can possibly alter that if the will were to have it altered. But at the present moment, I don't think the will's there to alter it, and I don't think I would achieve an awful lot by doing it, perhaps other than to actually breach the code and or the other documentation. The code specifically sets out how the councillors are to conduct themselves on numerous things, most of which are dictated under the Act. Additional to that, the Act prescribes that the CEO puts in place a policy in respect to what councillors' interactions with staff are about and how they work and how that can happen. And in effect, predominantly, most of the interactions with staff are to be through the CEO or through the mayor to the CEO. There are occasions where it is accepted under the CEO's policy where councillors may deal directly with staff. They're very limited opportunities. There's a whole range of other things under the Local Government Act that specify that council's decisions are to be made and actions taken in accordance with the relevant law. And we are now starting to say that it is very technically correct that the councillors must do things in a very technical manner because the Act explicitly requires that. I think fundamentally, I think council laws to a large extent don't have the ability to undertake the role that the community thinks they do. And I think that's a function of the way the new Act has been put together and written. And frankly, this code of conduct isn't materially, in my observation, materially different to the one that stands at the moment. So whether this gets up this time or not, it really isn't going to be a material difference. Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mildren. Councillor Quilty.
My apologies. I have a quick question. I have had an explained connection interruption from when the mayor announced the item until Councillor Mildren was talking about correcting the absence of possibility to correct reports even by council resolutions at the meeting. So I missed that bit. Could you please let me know who moved and seconded?
Yes, certainly. Moved was Councillor Watson, seconded was Councillor Simpendorfer, who's reserved his right to speak.
Yes. So have I missed a lot other than that?
No, Councillor Quilty, you've picked up on the guts of it so far. Councillor Watson, I guess in summary, had suggested that he would hesitate to ever hope to have to pull this document out of a drawer and use it. So that was pretty much where we're up to. So do you wish to speak further?
Yes, please, if I may.
Okay, fire away.
Yes, thank you. I respectfully disagree with Councillor Watson, with your rendition of Councillor Watson. I would love to use this document. I would love to it to be my manual, to be on the table, to tell me how to be a good councillor. Regrettably, this current document only partially satisfy this requirement that personally I have towards code of conduct. The very first page of the document cites section 139 of the Act, which says that the purpose of the code of conduct is to include the standards of conduct expected to be observed by councillors. I would say that this code of conduct was developed for the councillors, but not by councillors. Therefore, it's understandable why not all the requirements of councillors or some individual councillors may have been observed. I have found this code of conduct to be a bit heavy on the prohibitive side, if I may say so, heavily quoting the section 124, which talks about interaction of staff and councillors, and councillors expressing their opinion or requesting changes or additions to the report. I can see why it is important, and it probably has been pointed out, but because I haven't heard the beginning, I would like to point out that there is another document that works within this with this document. It's the separate document which outlines the policy of interacting between staff and councillors. So it is an important document. It is important for us to know. However, I find this code of conduct to be a bit heavy. This code of conduct doesn't let me know how I can go, me or other councillors who may want to add something to the report, may want to request some information to help them make a decision, may request to add some information to the report which they came across or came to know as a result of community contacts, and on and on and on. I know that we can make comments during the briefings, but personally, every time I feel like treading on eggshells when I'm doing that, due to the extremely prescriptive Act and Code of Conduct and protocols. So I would really like a Code of Conduct which councillors have had the opportunity to put in, which would allow councillors to be efficient and to have a bit more of a say of what they would like to have in the reports to help them make the decision. The other shortcoming I found in this code of conduct, not to criticize it, but to talk about my personal preferences. And again, it's not meant to be a reflection on the current situation, but a hypothetical occurrence if as the Code of Conduct says, the breach between the staff and the councillors is our Chief Executive Officer. If ever any councillor had any conflict, hypothetically, with a Chief Executive Officer, there is a very little, one little paragraph on page 30 of the agenda in which this Code of Conduct is included to briefly describe that it's taken up with the mayor. The mayor may or may not choose to act on it, and we may choose to discuss it in the review, in the performance review, which is only annual. So there may be 10 or 12 months between a hypothetical occurrence and the review. I hope it will never come to it and we never have to pull it out of the drawer. However, it would make me feel a bit more secure to know and to have some steps which describes the arbitration process, again, with a hope to never have to pull it out. So due to those shortcomings, especially the first one, I won't be supporting this Code of Conduct tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quilty. Can I remind you, Councillor, just be mindful of your time limits. Councillor Hall, thank you very much.
Well, I won't talk for very long, I can guarantee you that. Look, when we've discussed this at council, I've always been asked what my views were and always supported as little as possible, meaning that we go by what the Local Government Act says, and you know, maybe a little bit more, and that's it. We've got no choice but to adopt the Local Government Act, so you know that's out of our hands. But you know, local government have some of the strictest policies in behaviour and conduct out of all levels of government, and even in other states. Victorian is extremely strict, and just what Councillor Mildren had said, and Councillor Courtney, it's we have very little say in. I mean, people come to me and they go, oh, you know, ask me certain questions and stuff, and you know, I have very little input into council, which they're quite sort of surprised about. But this last policy was tinkered with a bit. I've always said that I was about little as possible. I think really, if we really wanted to have a good look at it, it probably needs to be pulled apart to the basics and then added to. That's my view anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Simpfendorfer, you'd reserved your right.
Just very quickly, Mr. Mayor, I'll take the points of Councillor Mildren and others that highlight that this is under the Local Government Act and fairly out of our hands, and we're not in any different situation to any other local government in Victoria. But if there are a whole range of things, as other councillors have said, then we can share them collectively around the table and work on our document later. But I'll be supporting it on this time round. I think it falls in line with the Local Government Act and what our expectations are.
Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillor Watson, in closing.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I was just having trouble finding that mute button. I take on board all what my fellow councillors have said before me, but probably on performing the role of councillor point 3.1.2 is that with that we undertake training and professional development. So within this, I call it a toolbox for us to follow. To be good citizens and good councillors, we have the ability to have professional development, bringing the best effective councillor to the team and to lead our community. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillors, I therefore put the motion. All those in favour? All those opposed? Councillors, the motion is defeated under the fact that we do require 2/3 of the councillor group to be able to be in support of that change to the Code of Conduct. So therefore, those that were hoping I may have exercised my world record attempt at a casting vote tonight, unfortunately missed out this time around on that one. That's defeated, and the existing councillor Code of Conduct remains in place. On to item 8.2, the Councillor Professional Development Policy. Councillors, there's a recommendation on page 36. Would somebody like to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Quilty. As per the recommendation, do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillor Quilty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I believe there isn't much to discuss. We already had a brief discussion of its draft before it went for community consultation. We haven't received any comments from the community. Like I did before, I would like to emphasize that I think our councillors should be grateful for the opportunity to do the training that is required for performing their role effectively and efficiently. Councillors should be diligent in performing that training and reporting back, and councillors should be, of course, frugal and trying to take as much as possible on board to perform their roles, to try not to take more than that, which I'm sure that we all will. Otherwise, it's a good policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quilty. Councillor Simpfendorfer.
No, nothing further to add. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillors. Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think probably one of the points is that this is not required by legislation for a change, but it's really considered for our best practice. So I think it's really great that we have something in place for that purpose and that we have control over.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Mildren or Hall, do you wish to speak? No, thank you. Councillor Quilty, in closing, anything else in closing?
And nothing else, thank you.
Okay, I'll therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. On to item 8.3, the sale, exchange and transfer of land policy. This is obviously council-owned land discussed in this report. There's a recommendation on page 44. Would somebody like to move a motion? Somebody prepared to move? Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Do I have a seconder as per recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Simpfendorfer.
As per the recommendation, Mr Mayor, that the property divestment be revoked and the new policy, as has been attached, be adopted. It's pretty straightforward.
Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillor Watson.
I echo the remarks of Councillor Simpendorfer. So it's a document that we've upgraded. So I'm happy to put it forward.
Thank you, Councillor Councillor Watson. Councillors, Councillor Quilty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to point out that a part of this policy is formed by a confidential document, which is Logic Industrial Estate Land Sale Principles. I will not be supporting this policy due to the reasons connected to this particular document. For fear of breaching the confidentiality, I will just say I do not like it. And I would also like to point out that I wish this document could be made public. Unfortunately, in its current form, it has to remain confidential. However, I believe principles of land sale for selling council-owned land should be available to the public. Regardless, I can't make any more comments, and I'll just say I won't be supporting this policy on the grounds that I don't like attachment C, the land sale principles for Logic. Thank you.
Councillors, just before we go any further, I am happy to take this this topic of the confidential attachment in camera. If somebody would like to move and second that, I'm more than happy to do that. But if I don't have that, then I'm happy to proceed.
I didn't do that because I didn't know we would achieve much, but I'm very happy to listen to my colleagues.
So you're happy to move that way, Councillor Quilty?
No, if I said I wasn't going to move.
Oh, you don't want to go in camera?
I didn't know that we would achieve much, but if somebody is happy to move it.
Okay. Councillors, I'll look to the room of you. No? All right, we'll press on. So, Councillors Hall or Mildren, would you like to speak to the matter? Thank you, Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me preface my remarks by saying I'm conscious of what the Code of Conduct says, and I'm conscious of what Section 124 of the Act says when I respond to this. I think that we're not presenting the broadness of this policy in the way that we could be. I think we could be quite a deal more commercially in touch than what the policy reflects. And certainly in respect to the contents of the confidential component, but also more broadly as well. I think we don't have an approach that I consider is the appropriate way of going about dealing with council land sales, and particularly those land sales that relate to industry attraction or business attraction. I think there is a somewhat more merits-based approach that we could take rather than the so-called bill of criteria approach. Whenever you do a bill of criteria approach, you never get everything covered, whereas if you've got a merits-based principles-based approach, you generally have a set of fundamentals that will enable a decision to be made on a broad range of things based on merit on the specific matters of each case, rather than being directed by the bill, so to speak. So from that point of view, Mr. Mayor, I can't support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mildren. Councillor Hall? No? Okay. In closing, Councillor Simpfendorfer?
No, nothing further, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Therefore, put the motion. All those in favour? All opposed? I will now exercise the casting vote of the Mayor, since we have a tied vote there at 3 apiece, and I'll vote to support and carry the motion there in front of us on item 8.3. Item 8.4 is the June 2021 quarterly finance report. Now, Councillor Quilty, I may be a little cheeky, knowing that you are our councillor member on our Audit and Risk Committee. I just thought I'd check to see if you're happy to move as per the recommendation on this one on page 59. Yes?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to move as per the recommendation. Sorry, I didn't fix the light in my room. I didn't realize there will be the light in the back. Anyway,
I'll just get a seconder before, if I can. I'll get a seconder before we move on. Do I have a seconder as per the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Watson. All right, the floor is yours, Councillor Quilty.
Thank you. I won't be actually talking much about it, because as it has been pointed out in the report that was presented to us, this is not a final report. There will be more work done on it, and it's an so-called, so to speak, interim management report. There is a fairly good commentary on what's happening on the adjustments that were made in the fourth quarter of the year. Everything made sense to me. I would like to point out that there were a few adjustments that were due to receipt of a grant that was expected in the next quarter, and also something that struck me in the table 1 in income statement. There are a couple of lines that talk about expenditure, 98,000 employee costs, and then 18,000 credit in materials. It may raise questions, but there is an explanation to it on the over page in there is a table 2, and then there is the following page. The page breaks it up, and it's not employees and materials. It says increased grants preschool, increased grants emergency services, and other. So I just thought I'd point it out because it may be a bit confusing when you look at the a big statement, but I don't know whether it can be presented in a different way in a big statement. However, the breakdown gives a slightly different picture to that. There is interesting capital program. The 1.7 million adjustment that was done to the income side due to the grant, but it was all offset by the expenses, and I will just zip it and, I assure you I will talk more on the annual financials when they come up for during the meeting, but this, as it has been pointed out, is a management report. Thanks for that. I'll be happy to vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quilty. Councillor Watson. Nothing to add, Councillor Watson? Okay, thank you. I'm getting the head shake, so I'm all clear. Councillors, anything to add from any of you? Councillor Simpfendorfer, no. Paul or Mildren? No. Anything in closing, Councillor Quilty?
No, thank you. Just thank you very much to the finance team and Officer Klein. Thank you for providing the report and providing some clarifications following the briefing and before the meeting in an email. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quilty. Councillors, I therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you, Councillor Quilty. I was worried you'd lost your hand there for a moment. Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 8.5.
I'll vote with my left.
Item 8.5.
Sorry, I just said I'll vote with my left next.
That's right, Councillor Quilty. Is our insurance renewal for 2021 and 2022. That's item 8.5, councillors. There is a recommendation on page 80 of the agenda. Would somebody like to move a motion? Might be one that sits well with you again, Olga. Oh, sorry, Councillor Quilty, I should say.
That's fine, Mr. Mayor. I don't mind being called Olga. Yes, I'm. Jesus Christ.
Happy to move that one. Have I got a second?
I'm happy to move it as per recommendation. It looks a bit axy. All the insurances seem to be a bit axy at the moment. We do need an insurance.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Simpfendorfer on the seconder there. So do you have anything more to add in moving that, Councillor Quilty?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Simpfendorfer?
I echo the comments from Councillor Quilty there. It's an essential cost, unfortunately. Whilst it does look, we're over that $500,000, but it's part of the renewal process that we have to live with, unfortunately.
Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Other councillors? Thank you, Councillor Hall.
Look, I'm not going to add much, but I just will say that, whilst our premiums have gone up 7%, which really is pretty good considering, I've spoken to a few people, even myself, our policies have gone up 25%. So, yeah, that's a good outcome, really. So I know it's expensive, but it's, as the other councillor said, it's an item that we should have, but we always have to be mindful, trying to keep it as low as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, insurance is one of those things we do need to have to cover ourselves. And I think with the renovations we've done to our council building as well, and with better security and with fobs to go in and out, where in the past we didn't have a tracking, I think that'll help. And, it's a really sad thing that cyber crime is one of those things that going to be covering for that sort of thing. So there's lots of new things that are coming into our insurances that we require. So, yep, just a needed document, needed expenditure for our city.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Mildren, I haven't got anything from you on this one. Just before I go to Councillor Quilty in closing, I've got a head shake. Did I just see out of the corner of my eye? You're okay. Councillor Quilty, anything in closing?
No, thank you.
All right. Therefore, councillors, I put the motion. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thanks very much. 8.6 is the Internal Audit Plan 2020 to 2025. This might be your night, Councillor Quilty. Are you happy to move? Thank you. As per the recommendation.
Mr. Mayor, only if you promise to leave me alone when we come to tenders.
That's good. I like it. Do I have a seconder as per the recommendation? Show of hand there somewhere, Councillor. Otherwise, Councillor Quilty's all on her own. Thank you. Councillor Mildren has joined in the party. Thanks, Councillor Mildren. So, Councillor Quilty, away you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, internal audit plan, I'm happy with it and happy to support it. As many people know, I'm a part of the audit and risk. I represent council on the audit and risk committee, and this plan was developed. It was developed in-house by a council staff, but it was developed in consultation with audit and risk committee, with the council management team, with directors, with the CEO, and with the councillors, probably to a slightly less extent, but not to reflect on the quality of it. It is a good audit plan that picks up a variety of sectors to be audited, and the timing has been assigned over the 4 years according to the risk basically the riskiness, the risk involved in the area, the time when it was last audited, and number of other factors. There is a good list of areas to audit: procurement and sundry debtors being the first two items on the list, being for Q1 and Q2 of the following year. It's interesting to add that there is also a section of 8 areas which are non-financial or IT, or basically the areas that require a specialist audit plan, such as privacy, OH&S, environmental management systems. They all have been assigned their priority. I must say that I'll be voting in support. I feel happy with that list, and I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quilty. Councillor Mildren. Nothing further to add as seconder. Thank you. Other councillors? Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer.
Just wanted to highlight, Mr. Mayor, if I can, that it's a thorough process and quite detailed. So I just want to acknowledge the work done by the Audit Risk Committee, the management team, the CEO and directors, and particularly Councillor Quilty, that we're very lucky to have her experience and background as a group of councillors to be able to cast our eyes over this. So I just wanted to acknowledge that as a fellow councillor, that we really appreciate that extra look into the Audit Risk Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillors, I think you're all out now, but I will go to Councillor Quilty in closing. Thank you, Councillor Quilty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in closing, I will quote the paragraph from the summary report, which says that upon adoption of this internal audit plan, there will be a competitive procurement process to complete the reviews in the internal audit plan commencing in January 2022.
Thank you very much, Councillor Quilty. Councillors, I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 8.7, Councillor Quilty, I'll leave you alone, but this is the tender for the Birallee Park outdoor cricket net construction. There's a recommendation on page 226, councillors. Councillor Simpfendorfer is happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Simpfendorfer.
One of those processes that go through our procurement process. It was pleasing to see in this case that Jackson's Earth Moving Project Limited have been the recommended provider here, 100% local company, 100% local staff and materials that they're using here, and it's going to further enhance that part of our city that's going to, all our youth in that field of cricket and beyond can start to use that and put us on the map, both within Victoria, New South Wales and beyond. So very pleased that this is starting to complete that part of that cricket hub for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. With the follow on the comments from Councillor Simpfendorfer, going through the tender process, is that they did pull out a couple of the submissions that they're going to be using third parties. So we do have a great process of doing tenders and getting the right product at the end of it. I'd also like to mention that the external funding from other sources. And it's a great partnership to have the Albury City and Cricket Albury Wodonga have put more funds into it, and Cricket Australia as well. So having these extra funds as well is a great benefit to our bottom line and also to the community cricket.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. I'll turn to other councillors. Do we wish to speak to the motion? I've got a head shake from you, Councillor Mildren. Libby saving her voice. Sorry, Councillor Hall. Councillor Quilty, I did promise some time off, so I'll go back to you to close, Councillor Simpfendorfer.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. I therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. On to item 8.8, the tender for Baranduda Fields Stage 1, the civil works. This is one that I know many in the community have been waiting to see happen for some time. There is a recommendation on page 232. Do I have somebody to move as per the recommendation? Councillor Watson, thank you very much. A seconder? Councillor Simpfendorfer, thank you. Councillor Watson, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I think our not late councillor, but Rodney Wagman, a past councillor, would be very proud of this day because we've worked for a long time to get this project up. We had some really great quality tenders for the civil works, which is really pleasing, and some emerging new companies within our city. So a bit over $2.9 million will be spent, but unfortunately we'll see most of it underground to start with, Mr. Mayor. So that's the sad thing. When we spend lots of money, we don't always see it visually. So I'm very happy to put this motion forward on a project that's been in the making for a long time, but what will be great for generations to come.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Simpfendorfer.
Just reiterating much of the same. Councillor Watson style, just acknowledging those that have gone before us and done most of the heavy lifting, if not all of it, to get it to this stage. And pleased that we get to the point where it can really progress and get those foundations set for what will be an amazing sporting precinct. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Open the floor to councillors. All over and out. Councillor Watson in closing.
I'm sure Leon and his team have made sure the frogs are going to be safe, but I look forward to seeing this, if successful tonight, get underway.
Thank you, Councillor Watson, referencing the Sloan's froglet, which we've seen in many developments around our region. All right, councillors, I put the motion. All those in favour? All right, thank you. Carried unanimously. On to item 8.9. This is our road discontinuance and sale policy. There is a recommendation on page 239. Would somebody like to move a motion? As per the recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Watson. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Watson, stage is yours.
Mr. Mayor, there's not much need to be said on this policy, but each proposal, whichever comes before us, needs to be consulted with the community. So that's reassuring when anything comes forward on road discontinuation and sales policy. So I know now with good faith, hand on the heart, that anything that's going up, the community will be involved with.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Hall?
No, I don't have anything further to add. Thanks.
Thank you. Other councillors? No, I'm getting head shakes. Thank you, Councillor Watson. In closing?
Nothing to further add, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillors, for 8.9, I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 8.10, 965 Castle Creek Road, the road deviation and transfer of land. There's a recommendation on page 245, councillors. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. A seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Simpfendorfer, thank you.
Not much further to add, Mr. Mayor. It went out with community engagement, numerous emails and social media posts, being quite transparent there. I think it's just a bit of admin that needs to be done to move that property to the intended landholder. So not much more to say.
Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillor Hall?
Yeah, I don't have much to add. It went out for any formal submissions and none were received. And so it's something that we will just continue now to proceed, and just a bit of tidying up of a road that had a bit of a dogleg in it. So it's fixing up that and making it more practical. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Any other councillors wishing to speak? Councillor Watson?
We shouldn't overlook some of the social engagements we have with this, which I think we as a council are getting better with consulting with our community. So the message went into the Board of Mail on May 22nd. We had over 2,708 emails that went out to residents. 2 articles were mentioned in the City Life and community consultation online and social media posts. So an estimated audience of about 4,500 and with only 2 likes. And with no, as Councillor Hall said, no formal submissions were received. So I think we are doing our best to be very transparent and putting our information out to our people, particularly on issues that affect them.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Any other councillors wishing to speak? Councillor Simpfendorfer in closing.
Nothing further, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. For 8.10, councillors, I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thanks very much. Item 8.11, I understand we have a couple of conflicts of interest. Before we proceed, Councillor Simpfendorfer and Councillor Quilty are my 2 conflicts that I have on record. Councillor Simpfendorfer, if you could just state the reason for the conflict.
General conflict, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Quilty?
I also have general conflict. My child goes to school at Victory Lutheran College, therefore general conflict. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. We will now have in our back end you both taken out of the room and parked aside, so you don't need to worry about doing anything from your side. And once I have the go-ahead, councillors, we'll move on with item 8.11. So bear with me one moment. Good to go? Yep. Thank you very much. All right, the Wodonga Planning Scheme Amendment for Victory Lutheran College, the rezone the land from farming zone to general residential zone. And councillors, there is a recommendation on page 248. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Mildren. Seconder?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
can I move a variation to the recommendation?
Certainly. Let me just get myself on the right page. Is it a wording, Councillor Mildren?
Yes.
Let me get to the right page. And please, what was your, so you're not going with recommendation, but what would you like to see it worded as?
Okay, in point number 1, under the recommendation, delete the words officers seek, and then after the word authorisation, include be sought. And at point number 3, delete the words officers exhibit, and after the Wodonga Planning Scheme, insert be exhibited.
Thank you, Councillor Mildren. Happy to take that motion. Do we have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think this is entirely out of place, this amendment, given that a school isn't generally a farm, and the farming zone has some quite, we'll call them restrictive, but quite specific provisions that relate to the management of agricultural and related activities. And essentially, the school would have great difficulty complying with the requirements of the farming zone. So in that context, it's very appropriate to be rezoned. The fact that it's being proposed to go to general residential zone, some might argue that it doesn't fit with the residential zone either, but it's not a government school, so therefore it can't be a special use zone under the provisions of the scheme. So general residential zone allows things such as schools to be part or be within the zone. So I think in the view of the restricted level of options available under the planning scheme, this is probably the best one, and it gets the right answer to take the property away from farming zone. It also enables the use of the land upon which the school sits in a more efficient way, and if there is surplus land, it gives them an opportunity to deal with that in the manner that they see fit. So from that point of view, I support the motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mildren. Councillor Hall.
I don't have much to add to Councillor Mildren's comments. The gives them an opportunity to do any more expansion there under the farming zone. It would be difficult. So I have no issues with the changing of the zone of this amending of the zone of this. So no.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Watson, just a shake of the head if you have nothing to add, but up to you.
I'll just add one thing, Mr. Mayor, if I could, is that I'm surprised this wasn't done many years ago, back like in 1991 when they purchased the land to start their school. But it's just probably tidying everything up, and it'll be a good thing for the school and making sure everything is in the strictest rules or in the right correction.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Mildred, anything further in closing?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I suppose I should probably acknowledge that there's a fair chance I had something to do with the original permit for the school, because I was actually a staff member at Wodonga City in the planning department at the time. I don't actually remember doing it, but I probably had something to do with it. Other than that, no further to add. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mildred. I therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Carried unanimously. And Councillor Mildred, hopefully we don't find any more of your things to fix up. Is that right? I say that in jest, and I see you take it in good jest too. Councillors, we will bring those of conflict back into the room for the next item. Councillor Simpendorfer is standing on the side wall of his room. That's an impressive feat. Councillor Quilty, welcome back. Item 8.12, I do have another conflict. Councillor Mildred, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Some little while ago, my business was engaged by North East Water to do some or provide some advice that was not specifically in relation to this site, but was in relation to this particular issue in other parts of their domain. So best I get out. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mildred. And councillors, just a reminder, the tech will take care of Councillor Mildred removing. I'll just wait for confirmation that he's out before we move on, which it looks like he's parked aside. Thank you very much. So, councillors, on to item 8.12, the Wodonga Planning Scheme Amendment C131, Planning Panel Report and Recommendation, the application of environmental significance overlay at the Wodonga Water Treatment Plant. There is a recommendation on page 266. Would somebody like to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Simpendorfer. As per the recommendation, I'll put you down as a seconder if okay. Councillor Watson, because I saw you sort of almost raise your hand, similar timing. So, Councillor Simpendorfer.
As per the recommendation there, Mr. Mayor, incorporating the planning panel's recommendations and having the documents put forward to the Minister for Planning. Nothing more to say around that matter, I don't think.
Thank you, Councillor Simpendorfer. Councillor Watson.
It's just one of those processes we've got to do, Mr. Mayor, and as Councillor Simpendorfer said, I look forward to hear from a formal approval from the Minister of Planning, and so it's all intact.
Thank you. Councillors Hall or Quilty, anything to add? No. All right. Councillor Simpendorfer, anything in closing? You can shake your head if you'd like to save the mute button. Okay. Therefore, councillors, for 8.12, I put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously. We'll get Councillor Mildred back into the room for item 9.1. Welcome back, Councillor Mildred. Thank you very much. Item 9.1 is the Two Cities, One Community, almost a twin, sorry, Action Plan 2021, end of year report. There is a recommendation on page 329, councillors. And is somebody happy to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Watson, as per the recommendation. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Simpendorfer. Does anyone wish to speak against? Thank you, Councillor Mildred. Councillor Watson, stage is yours to start with, please.
I'll be very quick. The Two City, One Community, which was a great formation to bring our two cities together, our two councils together, and more importantly, probably bring our staff together. The joint advocacy is great for our communities. Some of the great things that occur, like the cricket hub, which we just moved another motion earlier tonight. Events like the Country Cup basketball, where the two cities get together, is another positive thing we do. But I think the most important thing is the strategic planning we do between our two cities and our region. So there's the report's there for everyone to look at, but for us to work together as two cities is a powerful thing to advocate to our governments. And I look forward to seeing a new Albury Council in the coming months so that we reunite this two cities, one community on a strategic basis. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Simpfendorfer.
I'll reserve the right, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Mildred, I know you threw your hand up to speak against. Fire away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whilst I tend to support much of what Councillor Watson said in terms of the opportunities that stand for us and the things that we have achieved, and the Cricket Academy is a good one, and some of the other things that we've been doing in relation to joint tenders on services such as our aquatics and other things, they're good outcomes, and they're the sort of things that I felt the original 2C, 1C program was intended to try and achieve. But in observation, the 2C, 1C projects become somewhat more of a bureaucratic feast with lots of the talk and preparation of documents recommending more reviews, etc., but not a lot of action other than those few things that we've mentioned. When it was first put together, there was talk of it dealing more at a strategic level across the two council areas, where we actually put strategic documentation together rather than to focus down onto projects and things. And I think we've lost our way a fair bit with what the 2C, 1C is all about. There's not a lot of action. The simple strategic commonalities that were part of the original proposal just don't seem to have had the priority. I just think we're running a risk, if we haven't got there already, of the 2C, 1C project becoming a bit of a bureaucratic sideshow. It concerns me a little that we've drifted away from the higher end strategic planning and so on that we actually had the conversation about when this was all first put together. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mildred. Is there anybody out of the councillor group that wishes to speak further? Councillor Quilty, Councillor Hall? No. Councillor Simpfendorfer, reserved your right.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. No, I tend to agree somewhat with Councillor Mildred on most of the points there. I look forward to working a bit more strategically with our counterparts over the river. I think it's even more so now with what we're facing in the last couple of years that we'll get the strategic part right. We're on the map for the wrong reasons with the border closures, but we really need to drive forward our strategic benefits for our region whilst we've got their attention and not turn into that bureaucratic sideshow that has the potential to. So looking forward to working with our counterparts over the river positively once they get through their election. Wish them all the best.
Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillor Watson, in closing.
I suppose one thing I did miss to mention earlier, Mr. Mayor, is probably the regional deals, and I understand, I take on board what Councillor Mildred said, that we are getting very political with it, but having two cities trying to push this deal through with the next budgetary process through federal government will be great to see. So I think we need to be still hot on the heels, and that's one reason we've got a two city, one community in place, so that it helps to build that relationship with government.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillors, I therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. All opposed? Thank you. Councillor Quilty, are you abstaining from voting? I didn't see a hand there, sorry, on either way. Councillors, I'll go again. All those in favour? All opposed? Thank you, Councillor Mildred. It is carried. We're on to item 9.2, councillors. That is the Climate Change Adaptation Action Plan update. There is an officer recommendation on page 338. Would somebody like to move a motion? As per the recommendation, Councillor Simpfendorfer, Councillor Mildred, seconder. Purpose of debate. So, sorry, motion is as per recommendation. I've got to move it. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Quilty, thank you. So mover Councillor Simpfendorfer, seconder Councillor Quilty, as per the recommendation. Councillor Simpfendorfer.
As per the recommendation there, Mr Mayor, it's updated and received, and I think the climate change plan that was on that attachment there in partnership with the other shires and councils is something that does need our attention and of the utmost importance. So we need to keep driving forward and keep doing best practice in that area for our community and sustainable plans in all aspects of what we do. So I'll be supporting this update report for notation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillor Quilty.
I have nothing of substance really here. Thank you for the reports provided to us. It looks like there's been a lot of work put into it. I don't have any further comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quilty. Councillor Mildren, I know because you had your hand in there, you must have wished to speak against.
Mr Mayor, I wasn't exactly planning to speak against in the context, but I was considering an alternative motion. Having said all that, there are some things that I think need to be said about the way we deal with this stuff. When you look at this documentation, if you read through it and read it carefully, and I know the original plans and so on were done prior to the preceding council, so they're greater than 4 years ago. But when you go through the document and you read it, there's an awful lot of stuff in there that just is incorrect in hindsight. We've found that a lot of the things that were being said and put in place weren't based on what's turned out to be factual. And also there's been quite a bit of change that's happened in the whole structure of climate matters and environmental matters more broadly in the intervening 5 years or 4 years. So that, as well as all the politics that's become very tightly associated with climate change, has really made this something different. And I think to just be sitting back and saying, well, business as usual, we're not going to adjust the policies and the approach we take, is burying our head in the sand a bit. What things have evolved to in the last few years is the politics of climate change is now quite different to the science of climate change, and we have a situation where the political agenda has taken precedence over the science. And I think as a council we have an obligation to actually go back and review and revisit all of these things and put the appropriate mechanisms in place to deal with climate change based on the science and not climate change based on the politics. From that point of view, not that I necessarily choose to vote against the fact that we receive and note the report. The report is in itself addresses the issue it purports to address. I'm just saying that there's a bigger picture here that we're probably letting slip through the net, and if we're really on the ball, we should be looking at doing something else about this, and probably it's something we should be doing as councillors and the council, obviously, because individual councillors can't do it, but as councillors we should have a closer involvement in how this is put together and what we do into the future. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mildren. Just before I move on, CEO, I might be putting on without notice on this one, just in response to Councillor Mildren's question around how we deal with these sorts of plans going forward. This is obviously an update for us. Is there plans in the future for that plan to be revisited? Sorry to use the word plan 3 times in my question.
So look, that's absolutely right, Mr Mayor. This plan covers the period 2017 to 2021. So it's an update on the old plan, and obviously we would be looking to update that plan, and that would be brought through council for future discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Councillors Quilty or Hall, I think are the only 2 I've missed so far. Pull me up if I'm wrong. Councillor Watson. No. Okay. Councillor Simpfendorfer in closing. Nothing further. Councillors, therefore, put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. On to item 10, councillors. I'm going to give you all permission to jump in and yell at me if you want me to stop somewhere, because I'll be making my way through the list of these reports, and I will pause and have a quick look around. But if you desperately need to jump in and add to anything, please let me know.
Mr. Mayor, just pull up when you get to general business. I think it was that I had an item. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So we're still at item 10. Thanks, Councillor Watson. 10.1 is the planning report for June 2021 on page 385. I take a look and there's no one jumping at me. 10.2 is the building report for June 2021 on page 388. No. 10.3 competitive services report for June 2021 on 393. No. The record of councillor meetings on 10.4, which is page 396. No. And the decisions register 10.5 on page 399. That rounds out the item 10. Item 11 is notices of motion, of which there are none. Item 12 is petitions, of which there are none. 13 is council common seal, of which there are none. 14, general business. Councils, I'll start with Councillor Watson and then I'll come back to Councillor Quilty for some general business. Thank you, Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Late this afternoon, I received an email from the Wodonga Historical Society and just advice of their AGM, which is coming up, which I'd like the general public to be forewarned that it's on the 3rd of August 2021 at 2 p.m. at Wodonga Football Club rooms. But probably more importantly is that two people who are going to re-stand for their nomination in their places of John Flower being the president and Yuta Wilshire being the secretary treasurer. They've done a power of work, and along with so many other volunteers that are down there. But I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention that they will be moving out to Baranduda in the near future because the property was sold, and I think it'll be a great new start for them out there, and they might have more people, foot traffic through their doors to see some of the great stuff that Wodonga Historical Society have on show, and what they're also putting onto archives, onto CDs or onto electronic format. So, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted, to let the community know that that these two hardworking people have been running that organisation.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Quilty, general business.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm coming back to the issue that I raised at the previous meeting and was offered the option to put up the notice of motion. My notice of motion was sadly rejected because it did not require any action by the council. I have reworked my notice of motion, but unfortunately my amended notice of motion didn't make it on time. As I pointed out in my correspondence with council staff, I will be putting up my notice of motion again in August. However, to avoid the issue becoming a bit stale, I thought I'd put it up now as a general business, as a suggestion to discuss, to seek council decision on whether the online council meeting on 28th of June and the council meeting on the 29th of June as an adjournment of the online meeting were valid and legal under the Local Government Act.
Councillor Quilty, I do admire your persistence in bringing that topic to light. I do understand that does not fit the category of general business, but I do know that the CEO has got your amended notice of motion there ready to be considered for the August meeting. So without further ado there, I'd suggest we wait for that to be accepted as a notice of motion.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor, hang on, I've got two hands. Councillor Mildren for general business.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in light of what was just said, I think the document in the point in regard to notices of motion is probably an incorrect reflection of the events, because the wording says council has not received any notice of motion for this meeting. I think a proper practice and procedure should have been that it was noted that a notice of motion had been received and was not accepted for whatever the reason might have been. I think that probably is a more accurate reflection of the events that transpired. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mildred. Happy to have that noted in the minutes at item 11 for notices of motion. Councillor Simpfendorfer, I saw your hand up as well.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I know we've been going for some time, so I'll keep this within the 2 minutes. I just want to take the second to recognise the broader community out there on both sides of the river. We've seen the lockdown hit us hard regionally, and now with no end date to what's just been announced today, I know everyone's doing it tough. Like a lot of people out there having to homeschool their kids, which I'm having to relearn grade 6 maths, but it's difficult out there. So I just really want to congratulate everyone that is doing the right thing, staying home, getting tested when you need to. We've seen how tough it is and how close to home it's coming to regional areas now. So well done to everyone out there. Hang in there, and hopefully we'll see this through and we can get back and support our business and keep smashing the menu log like I am. Support each other.
Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. And I think if I can just for a moment in the general business, I think that reiterates probably the feeling of all councillors as we think of our community members, including I know a lot of us in this meeting tonight that are restricted in what we can do each and every day, and the frustrations and I guess that uncertainty. So thanks for raising that one, Councillor Simpfendorfer. With no further general business, we'll move on to item 15, urgent business, of which there is none. Item 16 is question time. CEO, we did receive a question. I think the councillors as well as myself received one, but I've left that to your hands. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and councillors, we did receive a question on Sunday evening from Bart Citron, and Bart was representing the Australia Conservation Foundation, the Albury Wodonga branch. However, the question that was put to us does relate and include personal matters, and therefore we've disallowed it under the rule 62.10.5 of chapter 2 of the governance rules because it would breach people's privacy. That said, the question will be treated as routine correspondence, and we'll make sure that we get a full and comprehensive response returned to Bart Citron in response to his question over the next couple of days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, CEO. Council's item 17 is confidential business, of which there's none, and item 18 is urgent confidential business, of which there's also none. So, councillors, thank you. Keep up the good work. I know the community are reaching out to you each and every day with their frustrations and concerns. Thank you for your attendance this evening, to you and also to our executive here at the City of Wodonga. Have a good evening.